You know, when you think of Nepal, you probably picture the Himalayas, right? The highest peaks on Earth. But what if I told you they're also planning one of the steepest climbs in technology? Today, we're going to dive into their incredibly ambitious plan to leapfrog into the digital future, a massive effort called Digital Nepal.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the huge mountain Nepal is trying to climb, economically speaking. Then, we'll get to a really cool digital surprise that kind of changed everything. After that, we'll unpack the national tech blueprint itself, see what it actually means for people on the ground, and finally, connect it all back to the big goal, a more prosperous nation.
Okay, first up, Nepal's steep climb. And I mean that both literally and figuratively. See, to really get why this digital push is so urgent, you have to understand the main goal driving the country right now. And that is graduating from its official status as a least developed country, or LDC.
And that's really the core of the story here, this massive contrast. On one hand, you have this nation with just breathtaking beauty. I mean, 8 of the world's 10 highest mountains are right there. But on the other hand, it's a country that's faced some really tough challenges. Things like long-term political instability and, of course, devastating natural disasters like the earthquakes back in 2015. All of that has really held back its economic growth.
So, what does it actually take to graduate? Well, the UN has this checklist, and you have to meet 2 out of 3 specific criteria. By 2015, Nepal was actually doing pretty well. They had already hit the targets for human assets and for economic vulnerability. But there was a big one left. The real hurdle was that top line, gross national income per person. The goal was over $1,200, but Nepal was sitting at just $753. So you can see the problem, right? Closing that gap became the #1 mission.
But then, something amazing happened. Just when that economic climb looked the most difficult, this unexpected catalyst for change just appeared. It wasn't part of some grand government plan. It just happened. And it happened fast.
And it all started right here, with this wild number. By 2017, get this, mobile phone penetration had shot past 130%. Yeah, you heard that right. That means there was more than one mobile connection for every single man, woman, and child in the country. Just incredible. And of course, when everyone has a phone, what do they want? Data. The demand just exploded. Suddenly, internet penetration hit 63%. I mean, for a country with such intense mountainous geography, that's a truly remarkable number.
But it's the pace of this change that's just mind-blowing. In 2017, Nepal was adding 250 new internet users every single hour. Think about that for a second. This wasn't some slow, gradual change. It was a digital tidal wave. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just about Nepal catching up to the rest of the world. Nope. The growth was so fast, so explosive, that projections showed Nepal was actually on track to blow past the internet penetration rates of its massive neighbors, India and China, by 2025. This was a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and the government knew they absolutely had to grab it.
And that brings us to the heart of our story today, the government's answer to this massive digital wave. They decided they weren't just going to ride this wave, they were going to grab a surfboard and steer it. And that right there is the Digital Nepal Framework. So what is it exactly? Well, at its core, the Digital Nepal Framework is basically a national roadmap. It's this huge, comprehensive plan to take all that new connectivity we just talked about and use it, on purpose, to completely transform the country's most important sectors, both economic and social.
And when I say it's a huge plan, I'm not kidding. The scale is just massive. We're not talking about a few small projects here and there. The framework lays out 80 different initiatives. It's basically a top-to-bottom rethink of the entire country's infrastructure and services.
Now, to make sense of all 80 of those initiatives, they're grouped under these 8 key pillars. You've got the basics, like building the digital foundation, and then you've got these huge sectors they're targeting. We're talking agriculture, health, education, tourism, finance, you name it. The goal is pretty simple. Use tech to improve pretty much every single aspect of daily life in Nepal. Okay, so a big plan with 80 initiatives and 8 pillars sounds great on paper, right? But what does it actually mean for people? Let's zoom in a bit and move from the big picture policy to how this whole framework is supposed to change daily life for a regular person in Nepal. Let's take healthcare, for example. This is where you can really see the difference. In the old way, if you got sick in a remote village, you might have to travel for hours or even days just to see a doctor. The new way? The vision is to have a remote consultation through a telemedicine center. Or how about this? A drone delivering emergency medicine to a village that's been cut off by a landslide. It's all about using technology to make distance irrelevant.
Or look at tourism, which is so crucial for Nepal's economy. You know how frustrating visa paperwork can be, right? Well, instead of all those complicated paper-based forms, the plan is to move to a simple, streamlined electronic system. You apply online, submit your documents digitally, and get your approval right on your computer. It makes visiting Nepal way easier and, honestly, creates a much better first impression when you land at the airport.
And this is huge for rural communities. Agriculture is still the backbone of the economy for so many people. So a really key initiative is something called the e-Hot Bazaar. It's basically a digital marketplace. It lets farmers cut out the middlemen and sell their crops directly to buyers. This means more money in their pockets and a real boost for the whole agricultural sector.
And so, this brings us right back to where we started. All these different initiatives, in healthcare, in tourism, in farming, they're all designed to do one thing: tackle that central challenge of driving economic growth.
And this is really the bottom line, the core argument for the whole framework. If you look at the numbers, back in 2017, Nepal's GDP was around $25 billion. But with this plan fully in place, the projection was a GDP of over $36 billion by 2022. We're not talking about small, slow improvements here. This plan was designed for massive exponential growth.
But you know, behind all the numbers, all the data, all 80 of those initiatives, there's a really simple and powerful idea. It's a vision that was summed up by the Prime Minister: prosperous Nepal, happy Nepali. And at the end of the day, that's the real measure of success, isn't it?
So Nepal is making a huge bet. They're betting their future not just on traditional things like roads and factories, but on fiber optic cables, data centers, and most importantly, on the creativity of their own people. It's a really bold plan to use this digital surprise to conquer that steep economic climb. And it leaves us with a really big question to think about. Can a digital revolution really truly lift an entire nation?